What is up guys, and finally here it is, my video review of all the Annie variants. So first things first, I won't demo these fighters. I already did that in my variant showcase video. If you don't remember what they look like in action, or if you haven't watched that video yet, I highly recommend you do that first. This is mostly going to be a discussion of how good I think each variant is, especially in later stages of the game. It is going to be based on two things. First is how I've seen them operate during my early access experience, and second is their base stats when they're fully evolved and leveled. As you can see, I already have them lined up and prepared, and I will be sharing their stats to you throughout the video. And one last thing before we start. See these Annies on the screen? They're not mine, right? This is all from early access, which the devs were kind enough to grant me. I was testing Annie on a separate account that is not mine. So I am being very clear, guys. I do not own all the Annies. I do not own all the Annies. I do not own all the Annies. I do not own all the motherfuck. Alright, let's start with Star Child. Let's skim through her abilities real quick. While in Star Power mode, blocked hits have a chance of inflicting guard break, and blockbusters deal 50% more damage. As a bronze, she's actually a pretty good offensive variant, but would you want to take her to the late game? To answer that, we need to look at her stats. This is what they look like fully evolved. You can see her attack and HP on the upper right. Her base attack goes up to a little less than 7,400, which is pretty bad as far as late game standards go. For reference, Sheltered's base attack is almost the same, but I still think she's a better late game investment than Star Child. That's because Sheltered's peak damage output with the critical mass marquee and multiple stacks of Enrage is way higher and can keep up with some late game defenses. For Star Child, her only boost in damage comes from her blockbusters, and it has to be in Star Power mode, and the damage boost peaks at 50%. Nonetheless, access to guard break makes it much easier to initiate an offense. It's a very welcome feature because you might have already noticed it's not that easy to find openings as Annie because of her relatively slow movement. Kind of hard to blame her when our Lord and Savior is clinging to her leg, you know? Overall, Star Child is a good bronze, probably good till silver, barely functional in gold, and absolutely not worth evolving to diamond. Though to be fair, very few bronzes are. Next up we have Solar Flair. Her star power meter fills up 50% faster, and she gets 5 stacks of Enrage, Haste, and a 5-second fatigue when activating star power at full meter. And here are her base stats when fully evolved to diamond. As you can see, it's close to 9,300, and that's actually really high for a bronze. With 5 stacks of Enrage, her effective base attack goes up to over 18k. While that's an absurd number, you need to take into account the restrictions. First is availability. Star Power takes a long time to get to full, even with a 50% faster meter gain. I timed it, and Solar Flare takes 30 seconds to get to full Star Power. That's a lot of time before she gets access to her full signature abilities. Second restriction is the 5-second fatigue when she gets her power-ups. When the fatigue expires, she has a 50% chance of getting stunned, which is not worth the risk. So although her peak damage output is stellar, her actual DPS is nowhere near as high. And yeah, there are workarounds for the fatigue like immunity or a level 3 blockbuster, but on average, it doesn't really drive up her market value all that much. Taking all of this into account, she's more or less at the same level as Star Child. Great bronze, good silver, arguably a better gold than Star Child now that I think about it, but absolutely not worth evolving to diamond if you can help it. Next up, we have Galactic Glamour. She's a crit-based fighter that can inflict guard break when dealing crits and gain auto block when getting hit with crits. So these are her stats when fully evolved to diamond. For offense, 8,600 is honestly not that impressive as far as late game scaling is concerned. And with 52.3k HP, I find the auto block portion of her signature ability hard to justify on defense as well. But if you can min-max her stats towards crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent, then she can soft cheese certain fights by doing infinite guard break loops. Basically, after the first combo, you can break through opponents' guards repeatedly in an endless cycle. It's something I demonstrated in the variant showcase video, so again, check that out if you want to see it in action. But as far as crit-based silver fighters are concerned, Perfect Dark, Freaky Friday, and maybe even Terminator might be better options. Overall, I think she's great for a silver and maybe even a gold, especially with proper stat investments, but still a questionable option for diamond. Next up is Triple Threat. She gains a bunch of defensive buffs when activating star power, and specials give her a chance at refilling star power meter. Now, these are her stats at diamond. Yeah, it's a bit awkward, guys. Her signature ability is only consistently utilized on offense, but her base attack is even lower than Starchild's. She does have a decent base HP for a natural silver. The buffs she gets are mostly defensive, and she's a light type, so that does give her some room to defend. On defense, if she manages to activate star power, she could get very annoying. The AI likes throwing specials, and in certain spots, she could be very hard to kill, especially if she rolls into invincibility. The problem is, AI star power usage is a lot less reliable than with human pilots, so this still makes it overall a tough sell for me, especially when considering whether or not to evolve her. Overall, Triple Threat is extremely fun to use, but I would personally just keep her at silver. Next up is Ninja Star. When hitting an attacking opponent, she removes one opponent buff and inflicts guard break for 10 seconds. Punishing moves with slow recovery animations procs this ability, so it's a lot easier to pull off than you think. She also gets a 50% damage boost to her projectiles for each debuff applied to the opponent. Here, her stats fully evolved and maxed out, and I like what I see. Her stat distribution is more tailor-made for offense, her buff removal gives her utility, and even if it's only limited to projectiles, she does have access to damage boosts. And take note, the flying stars Annie shoots out of her butt during star power count as projectiles, so they get a damage boost as well. And since she gets even more damage the more debuffs you inflict, if you combine her with a sketchy, and maybe even throw in a pea shooter, her damage can get a little crazy. But don't get me wrong though, a little less than 10k base attack still makes it hard for her to compete in the late game, and competition for Dark Essence is already a little crowded as far as evolution is concerned. Nonetheless, if you really want her evolved to a diamond, proper stat investment and optimized team synergy gives this Silver Annie, in my opinion, the best chance among the three silvers at doing substantial work in the late game. Next up, you have Ageless Wonder. She gets a bunch of defensive buffs for 10 seconds if she performs a well-timed block, and inflicts Immobilize and gains precision when either fighter blocks a projectile. These are her base stats when fully evolved. She has a lot of HP. In fact, she has the most HP among all the gold Annies. Her signature ability is also very dangerous on defense. You have to play very clean against her because just a single block on her end makes it that much more difficult to take her out. And she's a light type, so she has enough catalysts to make her even more annoying. She's absolutely worth evolving to a diamond if you're looking to add some defense into your lineup. If this were a continuation of the Gold Fighter discussion series, I actually would consider her a high priority defender. But I will say, as far as light defenders are concerned, I still think Dreadlocks and Meowin' Forever are better. Next up, we have Materia Girl. She has a small chance of gaining star power when blocking, and she randomly gets 1 out of 5 buffs while in star power mode, as well as 5% blockbuster meter per second. All effects end when star power is turned off. Her base stats when fully evolved look something like this. So an attack stat of 10.1k for a natural gold that is best used for offense is actually not that impressive as far as late game standards go. Her star power buffs are also randomized, and 2 of the buffs are practically a whiff because regen and auto block do not contribute directly to her damage output. Rolling into Enrage gives her a much needed boost, but even then, it only peaks at a single stack. Haste is good for the quick meter gain, and combined with her passive 5% per second from the signature ability, she could get to her level 3 blockbuster pretty quickly. I do actually think the highest roll she can get is Precision, because she not only gets boosted damage from crits, she also gets utility from being able to ignore defensive signature abilities. However, I will say, the need for her to block to generate star power makes her a bit awkward to maneuver. For example, you rolled into Precision or Enrage, but then you're about to run out of meter, so you turn it off and start blocking. The next time you activate it, you're not even sure if you're gonna get the buff that you want again. You're gonna have to start toggling it on and off until you roll into the buff you want. I mean, sure, you can keep star power on while blocking, but with only a 10% chance to gain meter per hit blocked, there will be spots where you will lose more star power than you gain this way. So what about defense? On defense, she has a decent amount of HP and Frost Armor synergy, but that's pretty much it. Her signature ability is even more awkward in the hands of the AI. First of all, they're going to be blocking a lot less, and second, if they activate star power and roll into an offensive buff, they're not going to toggle it on and off to reroll. Overall, as far as golds go, I think she's still a solid mid-priority pick that can either high roll and pop off, or low roll and just be a bit underwhelming. I actually think her on-block signature ability needs a buff for more consistency. Increasing the odds to something like 20, maybe even 25% might make her feel a lot better to use, but that's just me. Next up is Moonstruck. Crits on projectiles gives her star power meter and inflicts Wither. Once per match, she can also revive and fully heal teammates relative to her missing health when activating star power at full meter. And these are her base stats fully evolved. She actually has the highest base attack among all the gold Annies, and thanks to the Wither and her signature ability, she is also the only Annie variant with meter control. However, 11.6 is as high as she'll go since she has no way to boost her damage. This is why on offense, she's surprisingly not necessarily a top tier pick if you're looking for a consistent form of burst. For example, Primed and Phantom Threads have similar base attack stats but also have access to Enrage. So that's something to consider when planning for the late game. In terms of star power consistency, she performs much better than Materia Girl because she can refill her meter while attacking, as opposed to Materia Girl who has to stagger her offense and block first. Again, take note, the stars that Annie shoots from her butt are projectiles, so if they crit, it's free star power. There are obvious downsides of course, because to maximize her signature ability, you have to max crit rate, which makes her worse against Marquee Painwheels and Dreadlocks. Wither also makes ICU Valentines tougher to take down, and as I mentioned earlier, despite her respectable base attack, she has no way to boost it further in the fight. As for her defensive ability, it's very high impact and powerful, and it almost makes her a scary pick on defense. However, there's just too many conditions to fulfill for this ability to generate value. First, she has to be at full star power meter. Second, she has to activate star power at full meter. There were a lot of times in my testing where the AI just died without ever activating star power even with full meter. And of course, the last condition is that at least one of her teammates needs to be dead. That means simply killing her first already neutralizes this ability. You can of course maybe try and build around her. For example, maybe team her up with a Trauma Center Valentine to make it harder to kill her first. But with her base stats skewed heavily towards attack, she's going to be relatively squishy. Overall, I put her somewhere between mid and high priority, leaning more towards high priority because her ability to stay in star power for extended periods of time might just serve as a damage boost she needs to be a force in the late game. Side note, she is my favorite gold Annie, but it's more for the Sailor Moon reference than anything else. Alright, Timeless Hero. She seems to be a fan favorite, a lot of people seem to want her. She can stack one of 3 buffs at random every 20 combo hits, and when she gets all 3, she gets full meter and infinite star power. Take note, she loses all of her buffs if she gets hit. So here are her base stats when fully evolved and maxed out. So I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but she has the exact same stats as Materia Girl. So you might also notice that they suffer from the same weaknesses. They have a relatively mediocre late game base attack of 10k and a reliance on RNG to get their necessary damage boosts. Though there are two things that make me feel like Timeless Hero is better. First is the possibility for her to get multiple stacks of Enrage, leading to more damage. The second one is that her buffs do not live and die by star power. They stay active even when star power is turned off. But getting multiple 20-hit combos is more time consuming than it looks, and depending on your luck, your damage output as you stack your buffs varies per fight. Some fights you'll high roll and get a bunch of Enrage stacks early. Other times you'll get nothing but auto block. I've finished a bunch of long fights where I didn't even manage to get all 3 buffs for the infinite star power. Overall, Timeless Hero has a very powerful signature ability that is balanced out by a high degree of variance and a base attack stat that absolutely needs Enrage stacks to do some heavy lifting on offense. I see her as a mid to high priority fighter for now. Next we have Model Leader. She can cleanse debuffs and grant armor to any active member every 20 seconds, and she herself gets permanent auto block for every 15% HP lost. And these are her base stats at max level. I'm sorry guys. I tried to keep it together. I just fucking can't. Look at that. Look at that HP guys. There's honestly not much to review here. It's one of the most powerful defensive support signature abilities in the game, if not the strongest, and it's on a tanky water fighter who gets harder and harder to take down the lower her health. So, if we're talking raw power level, yeah, I think she is the strongest Annie in the game, bar none. Yeah. Alright, hold on man. I need to take a break. Alright, so I need to be clear. As powerful as she is, I don't think she's broken. I do think she's really strong. I just want to make that part clear, okay? She cleanses debuffs in 20-second cycles, so one way to counter this is by playing around 10-second cycles using Sketchy's Curse and Outtakes. Easier said than done, of course. And finally, we have Heatsink. She gets a 15-second Enrage every time she uses a special or blockbuster while in star power mode, and her charge attacks consume the stacks to deal a 2-second stun and heavy bleed for each stack of Enrage consumed. Take note, though the Enrage stacks can only be gained via star power, turning it off does not cause the Enrage to disappear. So these are her base stats at max level. Not gonna laugh this time. But yeah, read them and weep guys. That's a lot of damage. She hits like a truck, even without signature abilities. She hits like a train when she has Enrage stacks, and she'll hit like a fucking planet if you decide to min-max her attack stats. And if you time your combos and charge attacks correctly to set up for resets, you can delete entire teams before they can even touch you. I pulled it off during the variant showcase video against a maxed out diamond team, and this was after making sure none of my moves had any attack boosts. Don't get me wrong, I still think Model Leader is overall more valuable than Heatsinked, but you know, on a more personal note, this is my favorite palette. I like League of Legends, and now that it's available on mobile, I might actually record some games after I'm done with this video. So that's my review of every Annie variant released. Hope this helped you gain some insight on which variant suits your fancy. And never forget the most important takeaway from this video. I do not own all the Annie.